Hey everyone, I'm Pat Fitzmaurice, managing editor of Fantasy Pros and Betting Pros, here with my favorite player props for week 13. And we're coming off a pretty good week 12, 6-1 last week. So one of the better weeks of the season, and by no means am I bragging about that. The previous weeks have been just struggling to keep up with the juice, kicking around at about 500. So last week was the rainstorm that ended the drought. And let's see if we can keep the momentum going into week 13 as we come down the home stretch in the NFL regular season. But before we get to my favorite player props, first, do you want to track all of your wagers in one place? Check out the Betting Pros pick tracker at bettingpros.com/pick-tracking. It syncs up with your sports books to tally which picks hit and which ones miss, and it gives you a live look at what the public is doing so you can use real-time tracking to determine which plays to make and which ones to fade. Get on the leaderboard and quickly become a sharp by using the free advice we have to offer at bettingpros.com/pick-tracking. All right, let's get to the picks for week 13, and we're going to start with Mike White, Jets backup quarterback. He lit up the Bears for 315 passing yards in week 12, and now he gets to face another NFC North team with a suspect pass defense. He heads up to Minneapolis to face the Vikings, who have given up a league-high 7.8 yards per pass attempt this season, and the Vikings are the NFL's fifth worst opponent passer rating. Patriots QB Mac Jones lit up Minnesota for 382 yards on Thanksgiving night. And 4 days before that, Dak Prescott completed 22 of 25 passes against the Vikings for 276 yards. So Vikings pass defense, not good. Mike White has a good set of weapons with Garrett Wilson, Elijah Moore, Davis, Tyler Conklin. Jets probably are not going to be real run heavy with Michael Carter nursing an ankle sprain. And the Vikings have some major issues at cornerback where Cam Dantzler is on injured reserve and rookie second rounder Andrew Booth is out for the year with a knee injury. So I like Mike White over 241.5 passing yards. I also like Derrick Henry over 84.5 rushing yards. And yeah, it seems like low-hanging fruit to take the over on Derrick Henry rushing yardage. He has failed to clear this number in 2 of his last 3 games, averaging just 59.3 rushing yards over that stretch. But is there any doubt the Titans are going to keep feeding Derrick Henry the rock? I mean, that's what they do on offense, let's face it. So Henry has cleared this number in 7 of 11 games this season. And this week he's up against an Eagles defense that is much easier to run on than to throw on. Philadelphia is giving up 5.4 yards per pass attempts. That is tied with Denver for the lowest mark in the league, but they're giving up 4.6 yards per carry to running back. So it's a little easier going on the ground against the Eagles than through the air. Last week, Packers running backs Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon combined for 20 carries and 107 yards against the Eagles. The week before that, it was Jonathan Taylor running for 84 yards. Back in week 10, it was Antonio Gibson and Brian Robinson of the Commanders combining for 130 yards against Philly. And in week 9, it was Texans rookie Dameon Pierce stampeding the Eagles for 139 rushing yards. So the Eagles can be had on the ground for sure, and we know what the Titans are going to do. They pound it with Derrick Henry. I like the over on 84.5 rushing yards. One rushing under I like is Saquon Barkley under 71.5 rushing yards. And we kind of have seen the Giants running game break down over the last couple of weeks. It started in week 11 with Barkley carrying 15 times for 22 yards against the Lions. And the Lions had been terrible against the run all season. So that was a cause for alarm. And then Thanksgiving Day against the Cowboys, Barkley, 11 carries for 39 yards. So it seems pretty unlikely that the Giants are going to fix their running game problems against the Washington Commanders this week. The Commanders rank 4th in DVOA against the run and are allowing only 79.8 rushing yards per game to running backs, seventh lowest total in the league. So Washington's good run defense against a slumping Giants run offense. Robert Woods, under 36.5 receiving yards. Woods has failed to hit this number in 5 of his last 6 games, and he's only produced 40 or more receiving yards in 2 of 11 games this season. He has fallen behind Treylon Burks in the pecking order, and maybe even behind Nick Westbrook-Ikine and some of the Titans tight ends too. Woods just not a big factor this year. And he has a tough Week 13 matchup against the Eagles. Just mentioned this with the Derrick Henry total, that the Eagles are much better against the pass than against the run. They have allowed the 5th fewest receiving yards to wide receivers this year. And look, the Eagles have a really tough pair of outside cornerbacks in Darius Slay and James Bradbury. So the under on Robert Woods, 36.5 receiving yards. Corey Davis, over 36.5 receiving yards. Same number as Robert Woods, but I like the over with Davis. And as noted earlier, the Vikings pass defense has really been bad this year. That's one of the reasons I like Davis to clear this relatively low bar. The Vikings are 27th in DVOA against the pass, and they've given up a league high 1,173 receiving yards to wide receivers. And as I mentioned, they have injury problems at cornerback with Cam Dantzler and Andrew Booth both out. So should be noted that over the first 6 weeks of the season, Corey Davis had averaged 5.5 catches and 58.5 yards per game before he sprained his MCL in week 7. Davis just got back from that injury in week 11, didn't play a full snap share in week 11. Last week, week 12, he did play a full snap share, 43 snaps, only 1 catch for 9 yards in that game where the Jets passing game smashed against the Bears. So kind of weird that Corey Davis didn't do much there. But with Davis getting a healthy snap share against a bad Vikings defense, I really think this is a good percentage play for him to go over 36.5 yards. And in 2 games last year that he played with Mike White, Davis had 4 catches for 47 yards and 5 catches for 93 yards. So take the over with Davis, over 36.5 receiving yards. George Pickens, over 44.5 receiving yards. Pickens has topped this number in 2 straight games, and he has a scrumptious Week 13 matchup against the Falcons, who have allowed 2,140 receiving yards to wide receivers this season, the second highest total in the league, behind only the Vikings. And with Steelers running back Najee Harris dealing with an oblique injury, pretty unlikely the Steelers go run heavy in this one. Look, if you've watched Pickens play this season, you know what a stud the rookie is and just how talented he is. Leverage that talent in a good matchup against the Falcons. Bet over 44.5 receiving yards for Pickens. And finally, Mike Gesicki, the Dolphins tight end, under 21.5 receiving yards. In his last 4 games, Gesicki has been targeted only 10 times, 2.5 targets a game. And he has just a brutal Week 13 matchup against the 49ers, who have allowed 356 receiving yards to tight ends all season. That works out to 32.4 receiving yards per game. Gesicki is not even the Dolphins' primary tight end. He basically splits snaps evenly with Durham Smythe. Gesicki's snap share on the year is 54%. So not even a full-time player, and he is in a really bad matchup, has not been getting a lot of targets lately. Bet the under on Mike Gesicki with 21.5 receiving yards. So just to recap my favorite 7 Week 13 player props. Mike White, over 241.5 passing yards. Derrick Henry, over 84.5 rushing yards. Saquon Barkley, under 71.5 rushing yards. Robert Woods, under 36.5 receiving yards. Corey Davis, over 36.5 receiving yards. George Pickens, over 44.5 receiving yards. And Mike Gesicki, under 21.5 receiving yards. That is going to do it for the Week 13 Pat Fitzmaurice player props video. And good luck to you in Week 13. May all your bets come through, and may it be a profitable week. Good luck, everyone. We'll talk to you again next week. So long.